All right, if you're having trouble understanding how web pages are put together, how to group things, how to use a div, and so on, please watch this video. It will help you. All right, so a web page is made up of a whole bunch of parts, right? And the main part, or the whole thing together, the whole web page, is an HTML page. All right, so imagine this blue is your entire page, just this section right here that I have highlighted. All right, so this is your entire page. Now, to tell your web browser that this is a web page, we give it tags. We give it a tag at the top that says, hey, I'm about to give you an HTML page. And we put a tag at the bottom that says, hey, our HTML page is finished. All right, so every document we do is going to have an HTML at the beginning and HTML at the end. That tells the browser where it should begin and where it should end. Now, in the old days, if you didn't do this exactly, no browser would display your page. Nowadays, a lot of browsers will figure it out, but you can't count on that. So you must start every page with HTML and finish every page with /HTML. I should never see anything after the closing HTML tag because that's the end of your page. You should never see anything before the opening HTML because that's the beginning of your page. Now within the page we have two pieces. We have a head, and that's where we're going to keep a lot of the information that the user doesn't actually see. That's where we keep our style sheets, and eventually when we write JavaScript code, that's where we're going to keep our code. The other piece is the body. The body is where we put the stuff that the user is going to see. It's where we put the divs and the forms and all that kind of stuff. So body is what we see. The head is instructions for how the body should look, plus some other stuff we're not going to worry about just yet. Now each of these has their own tags. So we're always going to have an opening head tag, and we're going to have a closing head tag. We're always going to have an opening body tag, and we're always going to have a closing body tag. All right, so this is how our page looks so far. It's got no content, but we've broken our page up. So we have the whole page, and then within it we have the head and the body. They're two separate containers. They don't overlap, so you should only ever have one body tag and one closing body tag. You should only have one head tag and one closing head tag, and they should not overlap. You cannot have the closing head tag after the beginning of the body tag. That would mix the two pieces. All right. Next, we have stuff that we put in the body. Let's say that we want to put a text box, an input box in the body. Well, we could just stick it here if we wanted, and a text box looks like this. See it? So we could put a form like that, or a input box like that, and that would kind of work. That would work in most circumstances. You'd have an input box. You'd actually be able to do certain things with that input box. But there's some things that you couldn't do with that input box because input boxes and other form elements are designed to be inside forms. Now, we're not going to do form processing in this class, so this next piece is not always essential with what we're going to do, but it's a good habit to get into. So sometimes on your page you want to have a form, and the form is where you group together all of your different input types. And again, like everything else, you have an opening form and a closing form. I'm going to make my form a little bit different, a little bit bigger, sorry. And to group together all of the things that are in a form that go together. Now, what I mean by that is sometimes you'll see multiple forms on a page. One form might be to submit your name and address to get something mailed to you at home. One might be a place to put in your name and email address to get something emailed to you. And sometimes you can see those two on the same page. Well, the way that the page knows which form is which is you put it inside of the form element. So normally, rather than just putting these input boxes in our body, we're going to put them inside of, oops, grab that. We're going to put them inside of a form. All right, so now we can put that form inside of our body. All right, so that's how we group them together, by putting them together in a form element. So both of those are part of the form. This is the form element. Now finally, sometimes we'll have more than one thing that we want to group together. Like, let's say we have a picture. So we're going to create an, let's say we have an IMG tag. And it's going to have source equals and then. All right, so we've got a picture we're going to put on the page. And let's say that that picture really goes with the form. That if we move stuff around the page, we want to make sure that the picture and the form, stay together. So what I could do is put the picture with the form next to the form. But just because it's next to the form, it's not grouped together. If I want to group something together, I can put it inside of a div. Okay, so if I put all of this inside of a div, and my div, let's make my div a little bigger so it fits, to know that it's a div, it has an opening div tag and a closing div tag. And now all of this is grouped together in one div. And I can put my div, I'm going to make my page a little bigger because I'm not sure it's going to all fit. All right, so now I have my div. Inside my div, I have a form and an image. They're all kind of grouped together. So if I put some code up here to move the div around, it's going to move everything when my div moves. That's the advantage of having a div. All right, so, and if I were to take all of this and create my page, here's what my page would look like. All right, so this is what my page looks like. Notice anything? HTML, head, closing head, body, div, form, input, closing form, image, div, body, HTML. So now if I were to render this right now, this isn't a real image, so that's not going to show up. But this page would just show two text boxes and a broken image link. Now, sometimes I will want to have more than one div on a page. If I wanted to have more than one div on a page, then I would put another div in here like that. It would make this page look like this. All right, so that is how you build a web page. That is the order they need to go in. As you can see, if you stick your opening div tag way up here before the head closes, then your div is going to be crossing that boundary, and it can't. The div has to be entirely within the body. Now, let me cover one other thing when it comes to CSS. CSS is a little bit different because CSS doesn't use those tags that have the little greater than less than signs. CSS uses a special format, and that special format requires that we put things inside style tags. So any CSS we want needs to go inside those style tags. If I want to make my divs look a certain way, then I say div, and then I say what I want it to look like. All right, and what this is saying is make anything that's inside of a div have a background color of red. I can add more stuff. I can say make it 300 pixels wide, 300 pixels tall. And now this. And so now what this tells my page is, and by the way, the style sheet has to go, I'm going to make this smaller. The style sheet has to go in the head, and all the instructions have to be in between those style tags, because the style container, this green container, was created by putting a style tag at the beginning and a style tag at the end, and everything has to be in between it. All right, because the starting tag is like the roof, and the bottom tag is like the floor, and the styles have to be in between the roof and the floor. So this says, hey, look on the body for any divs, and there's 2 of them. Give them a red background color, make them 300 pixels wide by 300 pixels high. Now, one more time, here's how that's going to look. All right, my style tags and my div. Now, I'm going to go ahead and save this, and let's take a look at it. All right, so I have 2 300 by 300 divs, and wait, we can't tell that there's 2 divs. It looks like one really big div, so let's add one little piece of information to our div here. We're going to add a margin which says create a little space in between. We'll refresh that. All right, so now you see I have 2 divs, because there's this div and this div, and those 2 divs have 10 pixels between them. Actually, it's going to be 20 pixels because it's 10 for that one and 10 for that one. They are 300 pixels by 300 pixels, and they are red. Now, for this one, this div right here has a form inside of it, and that form has 2 input boxes. That's what I see there and there. And it has an image. This is a broken image because this is not a, because image.jpg is not a real picture, but I'm going to tell you what, let me put a real picture with it. Hold on, let me see if there's a real picture in this location. There is. There's an PNG. Reload this. Oh wait, that's way too big. So let's do this. Let's add another style tag. We're going to tell anything that's an image. Oops. And notice this is going between the style tags. We want the images to have a width of 100 pixels. And there we go. All right, so that is how we build a web page. That is how and why we have to separate the pieces of the web page. We can't just randomly put stuff anywhere. We can't stick this down here. Doesn't work. We can't overlap things. Doesn't work. Everything has to be in its own little container. The exception is divs can contain more than one thing. And actually divs can contain other divs. That's fine. But most of the time, when it comes to the body, the head, the HTML, the style tags, the form tags, you have to put the stuff in between the tags correctly, or your page isn't going to work the way you expect it to. All right, hopefully this helped you with how to put together HTML and how to use the CSS correctly.